Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Earth's last message chilled the galaxy to its core. The Galactic Council chamber was alive with chaos. Holographic screens flickered across the massive hall, each displaying the same eerie message. Some screens showed nothing but static, while others looped the chilling transmission. The voice was broken, filled with distortions, but the words were unmistakable: "You have sealed your fate." A deep silence followed the transmission. High Chancellor Verox of the Zetherian Empire watched the display with narrowed eyes. His reptilian fingers tapped impatiently on the armrest of his throne. The transmission had come from Earth, a planet that was supposed to be nothing more than dust. Verox's second-in-command, Commander Threx, stepped forward. "This must be a hoax," he said, though there was uncertainty in his tone. "Earth was destroyed centuries ago. We wiped them out ourselves." Verox didn't respond immediately. His mind drifted back to the war, their war against humanity. Back then, the Zaporans had been the most powerful force in the galaxy. The humans had resisted, but their planet had ultimately fallen, their fleets burned in orbit, their cities reduced to ashes, and there had been no survivors. So who was sending this message? The Galactic Council members whispered among themselves, fear growing in their voices. The signal had been transmitted on every known frequency, even on secure military channels. That meant whoever had sent it had technology beyond anything the Council understood. Verox finally stood. His golden battle armor glinted under the chamber's artificial lights. "Trace the signal," he commanded. His voice echoed across the hall, silencing the nervous murmurs. "I want to know exactly where it came from." A deep-voiced officer from the Council's intelligence division hesitated. "We already tried, Chancellor. The signal originated from Earth's last known coordinates, but that system is empty. We've scanned it 100 times, there's nothing there." Verox clenched his jaw. That was impossible. "Then scan again." The Council's Grand Speaker, a towering being with 6 glowing eyes, turned toward him. "Chancellor Verox, you led the campaign that destroyed Earth. If this is not a hoax, then what do you believe it is?" Verox's gaze darkened. "I don't believe in ghosts," he muttered, "but I know one thing: if this is real, then we failed to finish the job." A heavy silence fell over the chamber, no one dared to speak. Then another officer spoke up, his voice uneasy. "Sir, there's something else." Verox turned. "What is it?" The officer hesitated before responding. Before the message ended, there was a data fragment attached to it. It was encrypted, but our systems managed to pull a partial file. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Show me." A new hologram flickered to life. It was grainy and unclear, but the image sent a chill through the room. It was the silhouette of a figure, a human figure. The recording was damaged, but in the background there were shapes, shadows of ships, but not Superior ships, these were unknown. The officer's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, we believe the transmission wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration." Verox's claws tightened into a fist, a declaration. The officer hesitated, that humanity is still out there, and they're coming back. The council chamber erupted into an uproar. If the transmission was real, then humanity had survived, and if humanity had survived, then they had spent centuries preparing. For the first time in his life, High Chancellor Verox felt something unfamiliar: fear. The command bridge of the Zeperian flagship Obsidian Wrath was bathed in dim crimson light. The air was thick with tension as High Chancellor Verox watched the transmission replay for the 100th time. The static-filled voice echoed through the chamber once more: "You have sealed your fate." Verox clenched his fists, the words felt less like a warning and more like a promise. His second-in-command, Commander Threx, shifted uneasily beside him. "Sir, we've dispatched 3 reconnaissance ships to Earth's last known coordinates. If there is something there, we'll know soon." Verox didn't respond, his golden eyes were locked onto the frozen hologram, the grainy image of a human silhouette standing before an unknown fleet. It can't be them, Threx muttered almost to himself. They were exterminated. Verox turned to him, his voice low, then who sent the message? Threx had no answer. A cold unease settled over the bridge. The Zaprans prided themselves on being the most dominant species in the galaxy, the architects of destruction. But if humanity had survived, if they had spent centuries hidden, evolving in the shadows, the thought was disturbing. A sharp alarm suddenly pierced the silence. A communications officer's spine stiffened as he read the incoming report. Sir, our reconnaissance ships have reached Earth's coordinates. Verox straightened, patched them through to a screen that blinked to life. The feed was grainy, but the shape of a dead star system appeared, blackened rocks floating where planets once orbited. Earth's location is nothing but a graveyard of asteroids. The lead pilot's voice crackled through the speakers. No signs of life, sir. No signals, just empty space. Verox's jaw tightened. It didn't make sense, the message had originated from here, but there was nothing. Keep scanning, he ordered. Seconds ticked by, the silence on the bridge was suffocating. Then, wait, something's wrong, the pilot's voice came again. Our readings, just static. The screen flickered, the pilot's voice cut off mid-sentence. A report sparked more static, then a new voice, not the pilot's, not Saphirian's, a deep, distorted tone filled the bridge speakers. You are being watched. For the first time in his life, Verox felt a cold chill crawl down his spine. The screen flickered again, and a final transmission came through, filled with static and distortion. The grave you left behind was never empty. Then, blackness, the signal cut, the feed was gone. Verox's claws dug into the metal railing. The reconnaissance fleet had just vanished. Silence fell over the command bridge. Threx's voice was barely above a whisper, Sir, what have we done? A heavy silence settled over the Zaprian War Council. The disappearance of the reconnaissance fleet was impossible to explain, and the message, you are being watched, hung in the air like a curse. High Chancellor Verox sat at the head of the war chamber, his golden eyes burning with anger. The other Zaprian commanders avoided his gaze, none of them had answers. Commander Threx finally spoke, Sir, we should assume the worst. If humanity, he hesitated, forcing himself to say the word. If they survived, they may have developed advanced stealth technology. Verox's claws scraped against the metal table. We burned their world to ash. If they lived, where did they go? No one had an answer. A beeping sound interrupted the tense atmosphere. A communications officer stood stiffly, his face pale. Sir, an unidentified fleet has appeared on our long-range scanners, they're outside the Zaprian borders. Verox's jaw tightened. Show me. A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying the unknown fleet. The Zaprans leaned in, their spines stiff with unease. The ships were unlike anything recorded in the Galactic archives, sleek, black vessels moving without any visible propulsion systems. They gave off no energy signatures, no warp trails, no hyperdrive emissions, they were ghosts. The fleet isn't responding to hails, the officer continued, they're just sitting there, watching. Verox narrowed his eyes. How many ships? The officer gulped, more than 2,000, sir. A murmur of disbelief spread through the room. Even the Zaprian Empire's war fleets hadn't gathered in such numbers unless they were preparing for full-scale planetary conquest. Threx leaned forward, staring at the ghostly fleet. This isn't possible. Who builds a fleet that large and stays hidden? Verox's claws tapped against the armrest of his chair as his mind raced. The Zaprans had ruled the galaxy for centuries, they had crushed countless civilizations, including humanity. But this felt like something else. Send a destroyer group, he ordered. I want those ships scanned. If they are human, I want proof. Threx hesitated. Sir, if they are human and they have this kind of technology. He trailed off. Verox met his gaze. Then we find out before they make the first move. Minutes later, a squadron of Zepyrian warships jumped into the region of space where the Phantom fleet waited. The War Council watched the live feed in tense silence. The Zepyrian destroyers spread out, scanners sweeping the silent ships. The commanders whispered among themselves, no life signs, no communication, no movement. Then, without warning, every screen in the war chamber flickered. A new image took over the transmission, a single towering figure in the darkness. A human, or at least something that looked human, its eyes glowed like dying stars, its armor pulsing with an eerie blue light. When it spoke, the voice wasn't one, but many, an overlapping chorus of voices, both male and female, as if an entire species spoke through a single entity. You destroyed our home. Now we return the favor. The transmission cut on the war chamber's main screen, and the Zepyrian destroyer squadron vanished, no explosions, no escape pods, no debris, just gone. Verox rose slowly from his chair, his throat feeling dry. Threx whispered the words that no one in the chamber dared to say, we never killed them, sir. We just made them into something else. Verox's hands clenched into fists for the first time in his rule, he felt fear. The Zepyrian War Council chamber had never been so quiet. The air felt thick, suffocating. Every commander, every officer, every soldier watching the screens felt the same thing, dread. The fleet of Phantom ships still lingered beyond Zepyrian space, unmoving, watching, but the real horror was that the destroyer squadron had vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no wreckage, no escape pods, nothing. High Chancellor Verox stared at the blank screens, his claws twitching. He had fought wars, conquered civilizations, and crushed rebellions with ruthless efficiency, but this was different. Rewind the transmission, Verox ordered, his voice steady, though those closest to him could sense the tension in his posture. The screen flickered back to life. The image of the lone human figure returned, its glowing eyes bore into them, its voice an overlapping echo, you destroyed our home. Now we return the favor. The transmission cut again. Commander Threx shifted uncomfortably. Sir, this is beyond conventional warfare. We're facing an enemy that shouldn't exist. The officers turned sharply, and yet here they were. His gaze swept across the chamber. We are the Zepyrian Empire. We do not cower in the face of shadows. The officers straightened, but their expressions remained uneasy. One of the intelligence officers hesitated before speaking. Sir, we've analyzed the transmission. There's something strange about it. Verox narrowed his eyes. The officer tapped a few commands, isolating the human's voice. The sound waves appeared on the screen, twisting, layered, unnatural. It's not just one voice, the officer said. It's thousands. A hush fell over the room. Thousands? Threx repeated. The officer nodded. It's like an entire species speaking through one being. He swallowed, and there's something else, the background noise. It's faint, but we adjusted the filters. The war chamber filled with a low, eerie hum. It wasn't static. It wasn't random interference, it was a heartbeat. Slow, deep, planet-sized. Verox's jaw clenched. What are you saying? The officer hesitated. I don't think we're dealing with individual humans anymore. I think whatever survived Earth's destruction became something else, something larger, something singular. He struggled for the right word before anyone could react. The chamber's emergency sirens blared. A frantic officer burst into the room. Sir, we have an incoming transmission. It's overriding our entire communication network. Verox straightened. Is it them? The officer nodded, pale. Yes, sir, and it's broadcasting on all frequencies. The screen flickered again. This time the image was different. The lone human figure was gone, in its place stood an entire fleet, not the phantom ships, but something far more terrifying. An armada of sleek, black warships stretched beyond the camera's field of view. Their surfaces pulsed with blue energy veins. Each one was larger than anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever built. And then the voice returned, "You took everything from us." The fleet began to move. "Now we take everything from you." The transmission cut. Verox felt his chest tighten as he turned to his officers. "Mobilize every warship we have." Threx swallowed hard. "Sir, if those ships are human, they've been preparing for this war for centuries." Verox's eyes burned. "Then we prepared to meet them." The war room was silent, a silence heavier than any battlefield. Every Zephyrian officer, every war strategist, every veteran of 1,000 conquests sat frozen as the screen displayed the impossible: the human armada had arrived. Sleek, black warships, far beyond Zephyrian engineering, loomed over the outer colonies. Not a single ship bore a faction insignia or identification code, they were united under a single cause: vengeance. A deep, chilling hum filled the war room, the same heartbeat-like frequency from the earlier transmission. It wasn't just a message anymore, it was a warning. Verox forced himself to stand tall, his claws gripping the control panel. "Status report." A trembling officer responded, "The enemy fleet has positioned itself beyond our defensive perimeter, but they're not attacking." Verox's eyes narrowed. "Then what are they waiting for?" Commander Threx exhaled sharply. "They want us to strike first." The realization settled over the war room like a storm cloud. If the Zaprans fired first, the humans could claim justification for total war. Verox's mandibles clicked together in frustration. Open a direct channel to their flagship. If they want to gloat, let's hear it from them directly. The transmission connected. The screen flickered to life, and for the first time in centuries, a human appeared before the Zephyrian Empire. The figure was clad in an armored exosuit, not of Zephyrian, Norian, or even ancient Terran design. It was something new, something evolved. The helmet obscured most of the human's face, save for the glowing blue eyes, unblinking, calculating, inhumanly calm. The voice, when it came, was layered, distorted, not one but thousands speaking as one. "We were waiting." Verox bared his teeth, and for a moment, the human tilted its head, as if urging him to make a choice. The war room held its breath. The human continued, "We have not fired upon you. We have not harmed your colonies. We have done nothing yet." The blue eyes burned brighter. "But you know why we are here." Verox sneered. "If you seek mercy, you'll find none here." The human gave the slightest tilt of its head. "Mercy? No understanding." The screen shifted, showing images that Zephyrians were never meant to see, Earth in its final moments. The footage was raw, untouched by propaganda, Zephyrian warships hovering over burning cities, their weapons tearing through human defenses, skyscrapers crumbling, children running, families clutching each other as the sky turned to fire, and in the background, Zephyrian commanders laughing. The war room went still. "We remember," the human voice said. Verox's claws dug into the metal table. "Your people are dead." The human's glowing eyes flickered. "Are we?" The transmission cut, and an alarm blared through the war room. "High Chancellor," an officer shouted. The first human warship fired. Not a weapon, a pulse, a low-frequency shockwave rippled through Zephyrian defenses, and in an instant, every Zephyrian warship beyond the home world went dark. No power, no weapons, no control. Panic erupted in the war room. "They disabled our fleet, they're inside our systems." How did they?" Another transmission came through. One word: run. The human warships began their descent. Verox's breath came slow and steady. He had seen 1,000 empires fall, but now, for the first time, he wondered if his own was next. The Zephyrian defensive grid collapsed within seconds. Verox's mandibles twitched as warning sirens blared through the war room. He turned to his officers, his voice like iron. "Report." A technician's claws shook as they tapped at a darkened console. "High Chancellor, we've lost contact with all outer fleets. The human signal bypassed our security protocols." Verox's eyes darkened. "Impossible, but the proof is before us." Human ships descended like silent reapers, untouched, unstoppable. The first explosions lit up the sky. Superior warships, paralyzed by the human virus, became floating tombs. The humans didn't waste energy on combat, they simply turned their enemy's strength into weakness. The Superior Empire's own fleet became their execution chamber. Verox's claws curled into fists. "Prepare planetary defenses. If our fleet is lost, we'll turn the home world into a fortress." The war room lurched as something massive broke through the planetary atmosphere. The entire command center shook, dust falling from the high ceilings. Verox turned to the massive display screen, his eyes widening. The human flagship had arrived. It was unlike anything Zepyrian war records had ever documented, a monolithic construct of unknown alloy stretching for miles, tall, shifting like liquid steel. No energy signatures, no exhaust trails, it was as if the void itself had formed a weapon. And then, for the first time in Zepyrian history, the capital world lost its artificial daylight. A vast shadow was cast over the cities, buildings once gleaming with imperial pride were drowned in darkness. Then came the voice, a signal overriding every Zepyrian channel, every hollow screen, every transmission line. "You erased us from history." The words boomed through every home, every colony, every worship still functional. But history does not forget. Verox clenched his jaw. "Activate planetary rail cannons. Bring that ship down." The massive anti-orbital rail guns charged with a deafening hum, their targeting systems locked onto the human flagship. "Fire!" The cannons roared. Hypersonic projectiles tore through the sky. The first shell hit the human flagship, and then it simply vanished. Verox's breath caught. When the second shell followed the same fate, the flagship's outer layer rippled like a mirage, absorbing the Zepyrian's strongest weaponry into nothingness. Then a single reply came through the Zepyrian network, a simple, haunting phrase, "Is that all you have?" The war room fell silent. Then, impact. The first human kinetic bombardment struck the planetary shields. One hit, the capital city's entire southern district collapsed. Verox staggered as the ground quaked beneath him. The screams of millions filled the comms. Another impact, the shield grid fractured. Another, the sky cracked apart as Zepyrian infrastructure crumbled under its own weight. A third impact, the home world's ocean split, swallowing entire regions. Verox fell to his knees. Never in Zepyrian history had they faced an enemy that didn't just defeat them but shattered the very core of their empire. He looked up at the towering flagship above and finally understood, this wasn't war, this was judgment. A final transmission came through, in the same voice as before, "Run, Zepyrians, run while you still can." The human fleet moved forward, and the great Zepyrian Empire, once the conquerors of thousands, became the conquered. The Zepyrian capital burned, towering structures that had stood for millennia crumbled into ruin. Smoke and fire choked the sky, turning the once glorious imperial world into a graveyard of shattered metal and stone. Verox stood atop the remains of his war room, his once pristine armor covered in dust and blood. The supreme High Chancellor of the Zepyrian Empire was now just another survivor in the ruins of his own throne. Above him, the human flagship hovered like an unmovable force of nature. No weapons fired, no armies descended, it simply loomed, watching. A voice echoed through the remains of the city, broadcasting on every device, every frequency, every mind. "This is not extinction." The word sent chills down Verox's spine. "This is remembrance." The Zepyrian people, the soldiers, the civilians, all paused, staring at the sky in horror. Verox clenched his fists. Why? You could have wiped us out. You have the power. Why let us live? For the first time, the transmission responded directly to him, because extinction is mercy. The words cut deeper than any blade. The Zephyrians had not been given the dignity of being erased, they had not been granted the peace of non-existence. Instead, they were left to suffer, to witness their empire dismantled, to live with the knowledge that they had been spared, not out of compassion, but out of cruelty. The human fleet turned away, leaving behind only devastation and the weight of their judgment. The Zephyrian Empire, once the greatest force in the galaxy, had been reduced to refugees among the stars. Everywhere they fled, the whisper followed, "Remember Earth." The Zephyrian Empire was no more. Their fleets were in ruins, their worlds abandoned, their rules shattered. The survivors drifted through the galaxy as outcasts, bearing the weight of a crime that could never be undone. And yet, humanity did not conquer. They did not claim planets, they did not demand tribute, they simply vanished. Whispers spread among the remaining galactic civilizations, where had the humans gone? Some believed they had returned to the shadows, watching from unseen places, others swore that Earth itself had become a fortress, hidden from prying eyes, waiting for the day it would reveal itself again. But the most terrifying rumor of all was the one no one dared speak aloud, that humanity was never truly gone, that they had been there all along, watching, waiting, and if the galaxy ever dared to forget them again, they would return. And this time, there would be no warnings.